Where did the idea for the walk itself come from?
Well, I think it started, I was doing another walk in France, and I was sitting by a mountain lake somewhere in the Alps with my wife, and I was just about to finish full-time work, and I said, I'd like to do a lot more of this. She said, well, you better get on with it before you become decrepit, sort of encouraging thing wives and partners say. So, I've always liked long-distance walking. I'd done quite a lot of trekking in other parts of the world before that. I went to the Himalayas once, and New Zealand particularly. So I've always liked long-distance walking right since I was a kid, really. And I was also interested in France because before I got into a commercial career, I studied in Paris. After I left university, I did some postgraduate work on French history, studying in Paris before I decided to see the light and get a better paid job. So I guess when I retired, I sort of went back to my roots and thought it'd be interesting to do a project or something in France, and why not a big walk around France, as I like walking as well. So that's how it started, really. The idea of a circular walk, I think I sort of thought, well, the Tour de France cycle race sort of goes around France, so what about walking around it in a sort of circle of some sort?
So how did you then try and prepare your route? Or did you just think, right, let's just go?
Well, I started in the Pyrenees. Well, I love poring over maps, actually. I just love reading maps and imagining, I wonder what that place is like, and I wonder what that looks like. And of course you can find out so much on the web these days, so you can do a lot of research on the web. So I sort of thought I'd like to visit the Pyrenees, and then for some reason I started going around anti-clockwise, but I just looked at a lot of guidebooks, I looked at lots of stuff on the web, got a whole load of maps, and thought I'd like to go there. I'd never been there, and it sort of built up from there until I had a kind of rough plan, which I adapted a bit as I went along, but basically I had some idea, and I used mainly the Grand Randonnée, which people live in France will know are the major national sort of footpaths, and you can get lots of stuff from the French Federation of Walkers, the Fédération Française de Randonnée Pédestre, and so you can see where all the major footpaths are, and then sometimes you have to fill in with some local paths, or just bash discreetly across a field if you without getting some hunter waving his shotgun at you, particularly in the autumn.
Yeah, so I've read a few, so I think I'm about a third of the way through the book, and quite an important part seems to be your parents and their old age. How does that influence the walk?
Well, it influenced it in two ways. As you gather, I'm an only child, and I had two parents who divorced. They both, unfortunately, are now in homes, and they got dementia. Both of them, sadly. It influenced it two ways. One, to be honest, it was a little bit of a break from sort of worrying about them and trying to help them. But occasionally I had to break off my walk to go home to do something, because there was anybody else to do it. When you're sort of taking power of attorney and managing somebody's affairs, you can't do it all by remote control, really. I think the great thing about walking it is a great way of relieving a little bit of stress and decluttering your head, and I found that quite sort of therapeutic, really. Actually walking on your own, I thought it might be a little bit daunting, but actually found it really kind of relaxing, and you go at a gentle pace, and you look around what's around you, and you sort of somehow meet people in a different way when you're walking. They receive you slightly differently, and you kind of bump into all sorts of strange people, and it's a really new experience in life, particularly if, like me, you've sort of worked in a commercial job,
And we've got to ask you, what were some of the characters you met?
Yes, well, I must say, in the southern sort of half of France, particularly in the mountains, I met a lot of people who I suppose you would describe as sort of post-1968 dropouts, slightly middle-aged people who had those memories of students of sort of protesting and so on, and then found life in Paris a bit much, and had sort of gone off to run a refuge or a small farm somewhere right up in the middle of nowhere. And some of them were quite original. I mean, there was a chap I remember meeting in the Jura who, well, he was supposed to be a shepherd, but I think he was rather an intellectual shepherd, really. And he had a great big manifesto on the footpath which said, you know, I want to make new unconventional encounters, and I don't want people to come here with, you know, some commercial attitude. I just want to meet people. I thought, well, this could be interesting. I stayed with a chap running a refuge right up in the Long Dock, who was a retired sort of nightclub entertainer from Paris, and a whole group of people in there, and he had a incredible MIDI accent, and I remember thinking, well, my French isn't too bad, but keeping up with some of his jokes
quite a challenge.
Was a good test of comprehension. All sorts of people like that, really. I mean, and some of them are in the book, indeed.
I was also wondering, how did you then prepare for each day's walk? Because you must have been exhausted some days.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were some days when you felt a bit tired and a bit jaded. It wasn't, I don't think I ever felt so exhausted that I couldn't kind of carry on. I did get blisters badly once, not, you might think more often perhaps, but I think it only happened once where it was so bad that I had to rest for a bit because I got some new boots, and always had the same boots. I wore out, I think, 2 pairs of boots. And I got another pair, and my feet were just sort of bleeding and that kind of thing. Yeah, there were some days when it was very cold and very wet, and the scenery you couldn't see very much, and you thought, what the heck am I doing this for? You know, but I've got halfway round now. I mean, I've just got to keep going, haven't I? I'd be ashamed to turn back now. So you kind of, well, you get up and you have a coffee, and you know, you get your baguette and something for lunch, and you just sort of get yourself out on the road, and somehow when you've done that, you swing along, and you know, you get over any blues or any feeling of being a bit tired, and you always found somewhere interesting in the evening in a hostel to talk to people and have a nice glass of wine and a meal, and felt a bit better.
Where would you take a good friend then? Where would be some of your favourite spots to visit?
Well, there's a lot of choice. I love the Cevennes, which is the mountainous area bottom of the Massif Central, north of Montpellier. Partly because I'd done one walk, the Stevenson Trail.
Yeah.
Robert Louis Stevenson wrote this book called Travels with My Donkey, which was about his trek across the Cevennes in the 1878, actually, which is a wonderful sort of romantic adventure. I suppose he was one of the first walkers, certainly, to do a trek like that and write about it. And it's got all this amazing history about the Protestants and the persecution of them and so on. And it's an area that's been very depopulated, but you can see a lot of the remains of previous old villages and previous agriculture and so on. And it's got wonderful sort of views. You're walking on mountain tops and ridges a lot, and you get sort of panoramic views for a heck of a long way. So I love the Cevennes. I found the Pyrenees generally very, very attractive as well, slightly more than the Alps. And the Alps can be a bit bleak. There's a lot of shale. You seem to be flocking up rather grey slopes. I mean, it's obviously magnificent scenery, but I prefer the Pyrenees. And the Jura, which is perhaps not so well known, the Swiss border. To some people say, well, where's that? But there's some very fine hill walking and some beautiful forests, and it's got a distinctive architecture, and sometimes you sort of wander over into Switzerland. The path sort of goes in and out of France to Switzerland, so you suddenly, there's a middle of a wood, there's a little sign that says, oh, if you've got anything to declare, you shouldn't come through here, you should go down the road to the customs post, really. I'm bothered with that. And Alsace, actually, I mean, that's quite attractive to walk, because you get the mountains of the Vosges, and then you're in and out of the vineyards of some of the old Alsace towns, which of course are quite different from other parts of France. So there'd be 3 or 4 areas that I really enjoyed, but I mean, there were others as well.
Yeah. How have you changed then as a person since completing the walk, do you think?
Well, I think it really broadened my mind a bit, and I just met a lot of different kinds of people. I think it made me happier speaking French to absolutely anybody, because, you know, my French got pretty rusty as I didn't use it much in my commercial job, and so I did a bit of revision at an evening class at home, and I got much more confidence, and I made quite a few French friends. I mean, that's been one of the benefits of various people I met on the walk have invited me to stay with them, or I've been walking with them in France since. So it's given me a new kind of social life, I suppose, apart from anything else. I think it made me a little bit more relaxed if I was a bit concerned about family things, as I've said. And then I had the experience of actually trying to write the book and do something creative, which again was a new experience for me in life. And that's been a challenge, but it's been fun and interesting as well.
Yeah. How have you been able to sit at the desk and write with all this sort of adventure and notepads around you? Have you been able to concentrate and get on with the words?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are times when I'm at home when I feel to get itchy feet and want to go off for a walk. My friends would say, "Oh yeah, Terry, haven't you done a walk recently? What are you doing?" That sort of thing. But I've never found it difficult to, I'm very lucky, I've got a little hut in the garden. And I've always found it good to go out there and you kind of shut yourself away from all the other bits and pieces in life, and it's a nice break, something different to do. So I've not found it too difficult, to be honest. And I mean, the main challenge was kind of trying to assemble the material and actually select what's hopefully really interesting to readers and get rid of the rest of it, because I had a huge amount of material I could have used. So that was a bit of a challenge actually to sort that out, really.
Yeah. And if people wanted to find out a little bit more about your writing, what's the website address they can go to?
Well, the website, the best one is to look at my own, which is called walkingaroundfrance.com.